There's a truth most people only realize after their hearts have been shattered. Sometimes kindness itself is the knife that makes you bleed. You think that if you're patient enough, loving enough, forgiving enough, then they'll finally see you, they'll change, they'll become better. But some people never respond to love with a heart. They respond only with power. To them, every conversation, every apology, every tear isn't a bridge toward understanding, it's a test to see how much control they still have over you. When you love them, they feel powerful. When you're angry, they still feel powerful. But when you fall silent, when you stop reacting, when you begin to pull your energy back, that's when their entire world starts to collapse. Because a narcissist doesn't live on love, they live on emotional reactions. They need you to hurt so they can feel significant. They need you to be confused so they can feel right. They need you to keep proving your worth so they don't have to face the emptiness inside their own soul. A relationship with them isn't a journey shared. It's a psychological chess game where only one side is allowed to win. They'll praise you, then belittle you. They'll pull you close, then push you away. They'll give you hope, only to crush it, just to see if you'll still stand. And you, with all your goodness, with a heart that wants to believe in redemption, keep staying, thinking love might be enough to make them change. But they don't change because they were never seeking love, they were seeking emotional power. The cruelest part? They know exactly what softens your heart. They'll apologize just enough to keep you from leaving. They'll say the words you've been desperate to hear but never follow through. And so you stay trapped in a loop. Pain, forgiveness, hope, pain again. A loop that drains you without you even knowing why. Because the truth is, you're not in a relationship. You're in a system of manipulation. This video isn't about blame. It's not about dividing the world into good and bad people. It's a journey of awareness to help you understand the psychology of manipulation, to see what's really happening inside you, and most importantly, to reclaim the emotional authority that was taken from you for far too long. In the next few minutes, we'll go through 5 stages. 5 psychological perspectives that can help you stop fighting this losing battle, understanding the game they're playing, breaking the emotional addiction they've created, stopping the chase for validation from someone incapable of giving it, learning to enforce boundaries through action, not words, and finally, giving yourself the closure you've always needed, not through their apology, but through your peace. This isn't a speech against anyone. It's a gentle yet powerful reminder. Sometimes to protect yourself, you don't have to win their game. You just have to stop playing. One of the hardest shocks after realizing you were in a relationship with a narcissist is understanding that the whole time you were playing a game whose rules you never knew. You came into it with honesty, with the hope of a two-way connection, where both people listen, respect, and share. But for them, nothing is ever interaction is a test of power. From the first compliments, they learn what makes you smile. From the earliest conversations, they study your reactions, what shakes you, what makes you lose balance. Every time you open your heart, they take note, not to understand you, but to use it against you later. When you argue, they don't want understanding, they want victory. When you share your feelings, they're not listening, they're extracting. When you say, "I'm hurt," they don't feel remorse, they feel power. Because in the narcissist's inner world, making someone react is proof that they still have control. And in that game, the more emotional you become, the stronger they feel. You think they're seeking reconciliation, but what they're really doing is replaying a script. They want you to play the role of the weak one so they can keep being the righteous one. Every argument, every apology, every desperate explanation just gives them another win. Because to them, a conversation isn't a search for truth, it's a stage for their ego. What makes them dangerous isn't ignorance, it's precision. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to make you doubt yourself through gaslighting, through denying obvious facts, through making you wonder, am I overreacting? Or did I remember that wrong? They distort reality until you begin to lose touch with your own instincts. And once you stop trusting your inner compass, they own the map. That's when the subtle transformation begins. You start choosing your words carefully so you don't make them angry. You suppress emotions so you won't be called too sensitive. You apologize for things you didn't do. And slowly, in silence, you disappear piece by piece. The narcissist doesn't need to scream or threaten. As long as you believe that the only way to keep the peace is to yield, they've already won. Their goal isn't to make you love them, it's to make you emotionally dependent on them. They want you to believe that your peace depends on their mood. They want you to forget where love ends and endurance begins. At that point, your kindness stops being your strength. It becomes their weapon. Every time you forgive, they learn you'll forgive again. Every time you explain, they know that if they push hard enough, you'll try to fix it. And so the cycle continues. But the cruelest part of this game isn't the manipulation, it's the illusion of hope. Hope that if you're good enough, patient enough, loving enough, they'll finally see you. But that hope is the trap itself. Because they never wanted to change. They only wanted to keep the power you unknowingly handed them. Breaking free from this game begins with one simple but hardest truth. They're not seeking connection. They're seeking control. And you don't have to beat them at their own game. You just have to stop playing. Because real strength doesn't come from making them understand or making them regret. It comes from understanding yourself, from knowing you deserve a relationship where kindness isn't weaponized, where emotions aren't exploited, and where your silence no longer means surrender, but the declaration of your freedom. After being drawn into a narcissist's psychological game, what keeps you there is no longer love, it's emotional addiction. An addiction perfectly engineered through a mixture of pain and hope. It doesn't start with cruelty or coldness, it starts with sweetness. They make you believe you're special. They idealize you, praise you, make you feel like you're the only one who truly understands them. In the beginning, you feel seen, valued, connected on a rare and profound level. Everything happens fast, intense, almost divine, and you believe you found your soulmate. But the very moment you believe it, the hook is already buried deep in your soul. When the admiration fades, they begin to withdraw bit by bit. Warmth turns to coldness. Loving words turn into criticism. They leave you confused, wondering what you did wrong. And instead of walking away, you start trying to fix it. You think, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe I should be more patient. That's when the reinforcement mechanism, the random reward, takes hold. They give you affection, then take it away. They hurt you, then comfort you. Every time you're about to let go, they return with sweet words, familiar looks, or memories of who they used to be, and you fall for the illusion that maybe they've changed. But they haven't. They're just setting the bait to keep you hooked. Your mind starts to function like a dopamine addict. You wait for the text, the hug, the smallest sign of approval. You live between the fear of abandonment and the hope of love's return. Every time they're kind, you feel relief, like being saved, and that feeling becomes your trap. The narcissist knows this. They don't need chains to bind you, they only need to control your reactions. They know that by giving just enough affection, then suddenly withdrawing it, they can trap you in a psychological cycle. Pain, hope, relief, pain again, and through it you slowly lose the ability to tell the difference between love and dependency. You start making excuses for them. They didn't mean it. They're just hurt. They had a rough childhood. You explain away their cruelty because admitting they choose to hurt you is too painful. But that misplaced empathy becomes your prison. Every time you forgive them, you reinforce their power to wound you again. And then you start living on hope that the good times will return, but that isn't real hope. It's the illusion of someone being manipulated. Like a gambler in a casino, you stay not because you're winning, but because you believe the next round will be different. You cling to the memory of someone who once loved you, but that person no longer exists. The tragedy is that this mechanism makes you addicted to your own pain. The emotional highs and lows become familiar. Peace makes you anxious, while chaos makes you feel alive. That's why so many people, even when they know they're being hurt, still can't leave. They're not addicted to the person, they're addicted to the feeling that person creates. But no one can heal in an environment that keeps wounding them. You can't recover if every day you're waiting to see, do they love me today or hate me? That isn't love, it's emotional captivity. To break free from this cycle, you must recognize that the good moments aren't enough to save a toxic relationship. A few tender minutes can't erase hours of gaslighting, coldness, and contempt. The painful truth is, what you call love has turned into an addiction to the very person who hurts you. And addictions can't be cured with one more dose of hope. Escaping emotional addiction isn't about leaving in anger. It's about leaving in awareness. Awareness that you're no longer searching for who they used to be, because that person never truly existed. Awareness that love doesn't mean endurance, and that your kindness never needed to be proven, especially not to someone who only uses it to control you. The first step to reclaiming your power isn't fighting them, it's refusing to react the way they expect. When you stop explaining, stop fixing, stop chasing their approval, you begin to reclaim the one thing they fear most: emotional autonomy. And that is the first moment of your freedom. After all the pain, what keeps you trapped isn't love anymore. It's the craving for validation. A part of you still believes that if you're good enough, patient enough, loving enough, they'll finally change, see you for who you really are, and cherish the love you've given. That's the most common illusion in every toxic relationship. The illusion that you can heal the very person who broke you. But the truth is, a narcissist will never give you the recognition you're seeking because they don't have it to give. They don't see you as a person with feelings. They see you as a mirror reflecting their ego. When you shine, they feel bright. When you're weak, they feel powerful. And when you go silent, they crumble. Because without your reflection, their illusion of self begins to collapse. So they'll do anything to pull you back into the game, blame you, flatter you, fake remorse, even play the victim. They don't return because they love you. They return because they can't bear losing control. They need your reaction to feel that they still exist in your mind. And if you're still trying to make them understand, prove you're innocent, or explain your pain, you're still being controlled because they don't need to understand, they just need you to respond. Every time you explain yourself, you're giving them the authority to judge you. Every time you wait for their acknowledgement, you're handing them the power to define your worth. That's how they keep you under control, through emotional dependence. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: they will never truly understand you. Not because you haven't been clear enough, but because they don't want to. Acknowledging your feelings would mean facing the harm they've caused, and that's unbearable for their fragile ego. So they deny, they twist the story, they turn you into the overly sensitive one, or the one who always causes drama, and in your desperation, you try even harder to prove that you're only trying to love, to heal, to make peace. But to them, every attempt is just another sign that they still have power. What you need to understand is that their validation is not proof of your worth. It's a tool to manipulate your emotions. Once you realize that, you'll stop seeking it. Because you'll know it was never real. Stopping the chase for approval doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless. It's an act of self-respect. It's the quiet declaration that you no longer need someone else to confirm that you are worthy of love, respect, and peace. You are worthy simply because you exist. Letting go of the need for their validation isn't easy. It will hurt, You'll feel empty, as if you're losing a part of yourself. But in truth, that emptiness is only the illusion dissolving. When you stop begging for permission to be loved, when you stop waiting to be understood, you create space for something real, yourself. Don't mistake your silence for defeat. Sometimes silence is the most powerful act of rebellion. It says you no longer wish to play a game where only one person is allowed to exist. It says you've seen the truth and you choose freedom over approval. When you stop trying to make them see you, you'll start to see yourself more clearly than ever. You'll remember who you were before the manipulation, before your kindness was turned into a wound. You'll rediscover the values, dreams, and energy you lost while trying to please someone who could never be pleased. And from that moment, your power returns. A narcissist loses their grip the second you stop needing their validation. When you understand that my silence is not weakness, it's discernment, they become confused. For the first time, they can't read you, can't control you, can't weaponize your emotions. And that's the moment the power dynamic reverses. From here on, your journey is no longer about how to make them understand, but how to understand yourself better. You'll realize that your strength isn't in how much you can endure, but in knowing when to stop. You'll no longer need them to feel whole, because you've learned to validate your own worth. Once you realize you don't need a narcissist's approval, the next step is to set boundaries. But remember this: boundaries are not declarations, they're actions. Many people believe that simply saying, "I won't tolerate this," is enough. But in the narcissist world, words mean nothing without consequences. To them, every boundary is a challenge, a game to see whether you'll actually stand by what you say. When you tell them, "I won't tolerate disrespect," they'll test you again, this time more subtly, just to see how you'll respond. When you say, "I'm not going to argue like this anymore," they'll reopen the topic, twist your words, mix truth with lies, just enough to drag you back into the chaos. And if you react even a little, they'll know your boundaries are only words. That's why good-hearted people often end up emotionally exhausted in relationships with narcissists. They believe kindness will be respected, that if they explain enough, the other person will finally understand. But to someone who values power over connection, your explanations are not bridges, they're signals that you're still emotionally available, still reachable, still manipulable, and they will exploit that until there's nothing left to take. So setting a boundary isn't just about saying no, it's about acting decisively when that no is violated. If you say you'll leave the conversation when disrespected, then when it happens, you leave. No warnings, no pleading, no lecture. If you say you won't respond to controlling messages, then you don't, no matter how sweet, threatening, or guilt-inducing their words become. A narcissist respects only one thing: consequences. When they realize their behavior no longer gets results, they start to lose interest. When they see that every violation is met with consistent action, they understand they've lost control. But be cautious. This is when they escalate. In psychology, this is called an extinction burst. When a manipulator realizes their old tactics no longer work, they react more intensely. They may become cold, cruel, aggressive, or guilt-tripping. They'll say things like, "You're so cold, you've changed," or "You're selfish." They're not seeking truth, they're testing whether you'll crumble. And if you react, if you defend yourself with "I'm not cold, I'm just protecting myself," they've won another small round because your reaction is still their reward. Holding your boundaries means tolerating the discomfort of being misunderstood, unacknowledged, or blamed. You must accept that they may hate you for it, that they'll play the victim, that they'll rewrite the story to make you the villain. But you can't control their narrative. You can only control your response. And that's the difference between someone who's still being manipulated and someone who's awakened. The former tries to prove they're right. The latter stays silent, walks away from the chessboard, and lets action speak louder than words. That silence isn't surrender, it's strength. It says you no longer need to explain yourself to be understood. You know your limits, and you won't let anyone cross them, not through charm, guilt, or manipulation. Real boundaries aren't meant to change the narcissist, because they won't change. Boundaries exist to protect you from being dragged back into their storm. Every time you stand firm, you teach yourself a powerful truth. I no longer have to sacrifice my peace to keep a relationship alive. And you'll soon discover something profound. When you begin to honor your boundaries, you no longer need to force others to respect them. They remove themselves from your life because they can't survive in a space where they no longer hold control. In that moment, you'll see that victory isn't about changing them. It's about no longer reacting like before. No more chasing explanations, no more calming their rage, no more searching for peace in a war that never ends. That's when you finally understand boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. Doors that open to freedom. Freedom from their game, freedom from needing approval, freedom from the compulsion to save those who never wanted to be saved. And when you walk through that door, for the first time in a very long time, you'll feel something they never wanted you to feel, true peace. One of the hardest truths to accept after leaving a narcissist is realizing that you will never get the kind of ending you hoped for. There will be no apology, no acknowledgement, no moment of awakening where they finally say, "I was wrong." You won't get that, not because you don't deserve it, but because they are simply incapable of giving it. A narcissist doesn't look back to feel remorse, they look back to justify. They don't ask, "What did I do wrong?" They ask, "What can I say so I don't get blamed?" In their mind, taking responsibility isn't a path to truth, it's a threat to their ego. Admitting fault means losing power, and they would rather rewrite reality than face that. So they craft a new story. They're the victim, you're the unstable one, you're the betrayer. They'll build a new narrative where they're still the hero. And if you wait for closure from them, you'll be waiting forever. You'll drown in endless unanswered questions. Why did they do this? Do they ever miss me? Did they ever really love me? These questions don't lead outward, they spiral inward, eroding your peace and your sense of self. The truth is, closure isn't something you receive, it's something you give yourself. It begins the moment you accept that they will never take responsibility for what they've done, that justice, in their world, doesn't exist. And that's not unfairness, it's liberation. Because when you stop waiting for an apology, you cut the final thread that still ties you to them. You don't need their acknowledgement to know you were hurt. You don't need their agreements to know what they did was wrong. You don't need them to see you, because you've begun to see yourself. And from that moment on, the healing begins, not by forgiving them, but by removing them from the space in your mind. No more imaginary conversations, no more dreams about if only they changed. You learn to accept that they never will. And somehow, that truth stops hurting, because pain only exists as long as you resist reality. Once you accept it, it dissolves. You begin to notice the pieces of yourself that were lost during years of manipulation, your trust, your self-respect, your peace. But this time, instead of waiting for someone else to pick them up for you, you start gathering them yourself, one by one, with your own hands. You redefine your worth, not through anyone else's eyes, but through the simple truth that you're still here, still standing, still capable of love. Healing doesn't come when you hear, "I'm sorry." It comes when you whisper to yourself, "I'm enough. I don't need that anymore." Real strength isn't in making them regret, it's in not caring whether they do. One day, you'll think of them and feel no anger, no pain, just peace. Like recalling a dream you woke up from long ago. They will still be who they are, stuck in their cycles, trapped in their emptiness, but you've walked out of the maze. You don't need to shut the door between you, because it closed on its own the day you stopped reacting. That's what the narcissist will never understand. You don't need to win against them. You just need to be free from them. And when you reach that point, you're no longer part of the same story. That's the real ending. No applause, no apology, no reconciliation, just silence. And in that silence you hear something you haven't heard in years. Your own heartbeat. Steady, calm, peaceful. You've found closure. Not from them, but from yourself.